Yeah. Okay, Samantha's got a couple things going on. Yeah, and I'm doing my part. My thermostat is set at 80, so not very comfortable, but very good, Andy. Yeah, good thing I went to survival school. Deani, you don't know why? Deani, were you here last year? You don't pay bills. Well, okay. Yeah. Well, like I said, it's a community. It's a state effort. We don't not have the best electrical grid in the United States. So if everybody's sitting there at 68 degrees, it's going to drain our electrical grid system, and then we're going to have blackouts and rolling blackouts, and so it's everybody suffer a little bit so you don't suffer a lot. But yeah, if you live in an apartment and you don't pay the bills, that's fine. I'm not doing, I actually have solar panels, so but like I said, if everybody just sacrifices a little bit, the whole state doesn't have to suffer a lot. I don't know if you were here last winter, Deani, when everything went to hell. No water, no electricity. Oh, it was terrible. Oh. Okay, well, that's why we should sacrifice a little bit so it doesn't happen to us in the summer. Okay, folks, let's get back to A&P. Are there any questions about anything that we have covered? And there's quiet and calm. Okay. Fine then. We will press on. Really? No questions? Nothing? Okay. All right. Well, we got a little bit more time. But start studying. You know the rule, right, Andy? Andy?
Yes, sir.
Remind everybody, if I have no questions, that means one of two things. What are they, Andy?
That we either are experts at the material or we haven't looked at the material at all.
Okay. Yes. All right. So here we go. So if there are no questions, we're going to continue on with the respiratory system, and not to scare you, but it gets really, really, really complicated from here. All right, I'm just saying. And we're missing quite a few folks, so this will not be recorded, so take good notes. Unless a couple more people show up within the next couple minutes, I'm not going to record it. That's the rule I put down. So, this is where the tough stuff comes, folks. And I'd like to think that you'll have a lot of aha moments, especially when we talk about things in general in terms of just your everyday life as well as COVID. All right. So now we're on to gas exchange. And again, it seems to me a little misleading with this external respiration, but this is again the gas exchange that occurs between the alveoli and the capillaries. This will now be testable, folks. Everybody see that down there with cellular respiration? This is the whole basis of life. We need glucose, we need oxygen to produce ATP, we produce carbon dioxide and water. And I don't know, because I'm teaching 3 classes this summer, did I explain to you the importance of understanding what happens when carbon dioxide and water react? Did I do that for you guys? You can lie to me. Okay, so I trust those that say that I didn't. So let's go back a little bit. So I'm going to go to the camera here, folks, because this is so important. So again, that cellular respiration, the big thing there is that carbon dioxide. We're producing carbon dioxide when we make ATP. All right? And so I'm going to go to the camera and give you a little refresher lesson. It's something you probably should have learned in either a 1308 class or whatever, but I have no problem going over with it. Okay, so we produce a lot of CO2. All right, so we have CO2, and obviously we're 60 to 70% water. Can anybody impress me for a gold star? What is the product when these two things react? Anybody? Nobody can tell me. Okay, all right, that's why I'm going to go over this, all right? Very good, Andy. Andy gets another gold star. I think you're leading with the gold stars. All right, beautiful. H2CO3, which is carbonic acid. Now, can anybody tell me what makes an acid an acid in the simplest of terms? And don't be saying pH. What makes a molecule an acid?
Hydrogen.
Okay, Sarish, I'm not really thrilled with a one-word answer. What about hydrogen?
Hydrogen ion.
Okay, that's a two-word answer, so we're getting somewhere. And that's fine. I'll finish it for you, but very good, Suresh. Yes, an acid dissociates, splits, if you will, into hydrogen ions and, in this case, bicarbonate. Okay? Everybody with me so far? And this will be on your next test. All right? And you'll see why in just a little bit. All right? So I'm producing carbonic acid when I make ATP. And ultimately, I make carbonic acid. And so I got this going on in my body. I have to worry about this. Because if I have too many of these, my pH goes down. What's my pH in the ECF? What should it be? Somebody? Come on. Oh my goodness. Really? Okay. Andy, that's not good enough. 7-ish? Are you kidding me? And I'll explain myself. So 7.4 is good, 7.35. The reason I'm teasing you there, Andy, is because if your pH, which should be 7.3 to 7.4, that's normal, 3 to 4. If it goes to 7.7, you're hurting. You are really, really hurting. If it goes to 7.1, you're in bad shape as well. So it's your body's very particular. And let's go back to the basics. If my pH changes, which molecule is mostly affected in your body? Somebody. Anyone? Which biomolecule, which macromolecule is most affected by pH change? Very good, Christine. Hey, Christine, I thought you had to be somewhere. Okay, cool. Yes, okay. Okay, cool. All right. So proteins, and what type of proteins are by by far the most important for life and metabolism? There are lots of different functions of proteins, but there's one group of proteins that are by far the most critical. I'm going to give you a hint. Starts with an E. Very good, Christine. Enzymes. So if your pH goes out of whack over here and your enzymes don't work, bad things happen, and then you die. All right? So your body makes every effort. Oh, God. Jessica, we have 18. All right, fine. Because I think we're down to 22. We lost a couple, 2 or 3 people. So I will start recording. Boom. All right. As long as it doesn't go below 18. All right, so where was I? So yeah, your body goes through great measures to keep it here. This is really bad. This is really bad. All right? Think about it. And I'm sorry I didn't give you this lecture before. So, and I'm just going to wait. Okay, it went back to 18. So, Daniel, how long can you hold your breath? You're in a breath holding contest.
I usually win, so I say a minute and a half.
Okay, good. Minute and a half. But then there's that point when you have this extraordinary, compelling urge to breathe. Why is that, Daniel? Why do you think it is? Why do most people think it is? No, come on. What do you normally think it would be? Anybody. If you're holding your breath and all of a sudden you can't hold it any longer. Very good, Suresh. Very good. Most people think it's because you are running out of oxygen. Well, that's not true, believe it or not. That's not true. Inhaling and exhaling are equally important. So, and again, this is for a breath holding contest. So if you hold your breath, very good, Daniel. If you hold your breath, when you exhale, the whole point of exhaling is to get rid of CO2. So if you're holding your breath, your CO2 levels go up, your carbonic levels go up, your hydrogen ions go up, your pH goes down. And yeah, it doesn't take long, a minute and a half, and that's probably pretty good, Daniel. I'm sure a lot of people can probably do less than a minute. But what's going on is your pH is going down, and once it gets to like 7.1, your hypothalamus is going to say, oh no, this is bad. This is going to affect me. This is going to affect my enzymes. And your hypothalamus can override your will to hold your breath longer for that prize. Everybody with me so far? So breath holding has nothing to do with oxygen. You have like 5 minutes of oxygen circulating. But the CO2 levels you cannot deal with. You cannot deal with that because that's changing your pH. And it works both ways. So, who do I pick on? Jessica, Jeremy. What happens if I sat there, if I said to you, Jessica, I want you to start breathing as fast and as deep as you possibly can while you're sitting there. How are you going to feel after just a little while? Anyone? No one's done that? No. Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. You're going. Obviously, none of you have actually attempted to hyperventilate yourself, but Joshua got that. When you hyperventilate for no reason, you're just sitting there, you're going to feel lightheaded, dizzy, It's going to be uncomfortable because you did the exact opposite. You got rid of too much CO2. So your CO2 levels are too low, your carbonic acid levels are too low, your hydrogen ions are too low, and now your pH goes up. So yeah, it's that fast. So if you sat there and you hyperventilated right now, you can go ahead and try it if you want. Can't hurt yourself. But if you start hyperventilating, fast and deep breathing, you're going to get dizzy. You're going to get dizzy. And that's because your pH is too high. And your brain is saying, this isn't good either. And so your brain is going to try to cut off the blood flow to your brain because it's bad blood. Okay, so that's my little lecture. And again, practical. If you have somebody that's having a panic attack, that happens, an anxiety attack, what's the old school thing that you do for that person? Does anybody know?
Use a paper bag.
Very good. Who said that? Andy? Yeah.
Amy.
Or Andrea. See, I got an Andrea and an Andy. I don't know which one. You use a paper bag. Did you know why you're using that paper bag? Anyone? Now you do, if you're paying attention here. Why did you make them breathe in the paper bag? Okay, no, Daniel got it. Because if you use a paper bag, they're going to inhale the CO2 that they exhaled because you want more CO2. So when you give somebody a brown paper bag to breathe in, the whole purpose is that CO2, the excessive CO2 they exhaled, you want them to inhale it back in. Okay? All right, so there's your practical reasons. And here's another practical fun thing. You want to go and dive for oysters. Actually, you're diving for the pearls. And you're on the little boat. And right before you jump into the water, what should you do? Right before you take a deep breath, you're going to do something before you take that deep breath. No. No. Okay. All right. See? Cool stuff I'm teaching you. Cry. No. You're going to hyperventilate. You're going to No. Talani, it'd be the exact opposite. You want to remember what we said. When you hold in your breath and you have this urge to breathe, it's because your CO2 levels are too high. So what do? You hyperventilate and lower your CO2s abnormally low. That way, when you're underwater, you can hold your breath longer because you can afford to increase the CO2 levels. Did I just go over everybody's head on that one? Yep. Okay. Here's your CO2 level. That's normal. Okay. If you're, I'm going to try it. Usually I just do this in class. Okay. So here's my CO2 level. And I can give you the real number. So it's 40 millimeters per mercury. We'll learn about this later. Okay. All right. And I told you if you hold your breath, your CO2 levels are going to go up, and that's going to cause this reaction where your pH is going to drop. So, but I'm going to go try to dive for pearls. So I want to be able to hold my breath longer. So this is normal. If my CO2 levels get to 60, my hypothalamus is going to be unhappy with me. All right. And for a lot of us, how long that takes is variable. Again, we're talking about holding your breath. So this is your normal level. This would be a little bit of emergency, and this would be like a lot of emergency. If CO2 levels get here, then you're really going to want to breathe. All right. How long it takes you to get from your normal to 60 by holding your breath? We'll just say 30 seconds to a minute, and for some people, a little bit longer. But if I hyperventilate and I push out a bunch of extra CO2 by exhaling rapidly. Now my CO2 is 20. And so now when I'm under the water, I got this amount of time, however that could be, 30 seconds. And then I have this amount of time before I have this urge to breathe. Now, does that make sense? Once again, exhaling is all about getting rid of CO2. So if you hyperventilate, you're going to get rid of extra CO2 that you really didn't want to. So when you go pearl diving, you want to hyperventilate till you're a little bit dizzy, and then you jump in, and now you got a starting level that's way lower, so you can go here to here before you need the sensation to breathe. All right. That is all your application in real life. So now we can start. Everybody got all this? And it's been recorded. Okay. All right. So let's go back to our lecture. And again, this is where it all comes together, folks. All right. So great. We're only missing a couple people. So yeah, so that's why the cellular respiration equation is important and will be on your next test. All right. So we have another Dalton's law. Somebody remind me, what was the first law you need to know? Don't be afraid. What's the first law? Boyle's law. Very good. Very good. All right. And yeah, that's okay, Suresh. I know when there's misspelling when you're typing fast, so works fine. All right, so, and real quick, and I'm going to pick on somebody. I want to make sure everybody has been studying. I know that sounds scary. So who haven't heard? Cindy, Rojas. What's Boyle's law say in simple terms?
That was the atmospheric pressure, the 760.
Okay, that's way too much information. I just want a simple relationship. What does Boyle's law say? It's an inverse relationship. Natalia, help her.
When volume increases, pressure decreases. And
What's that?
opposite. When volume increases, pressure will decrease. And
Okay, when volume increases, pressure decreases, and vice versa. So it's an inverse
Yes.
relationship. One goes up, the other goes down. Very good. Very good, Suresh. They're inversely proportional. All right, that was Boyle's law. Now we have a new law, and it's a little bit more complicated. This is Dalton's law. Dalton, and I'll break this down so it makes a lot of sense, all right? The total pressure exerted by a mixture of gases is the sum of the pressures of the individual gases, okay? I know that was a whole lot that is kind of hard to like, what? But I want you to think about our atmosphere. And we learned last time that the atmospheric pressure is 760, all right? And this may be news to many of you, but when we look at the composition of the gases that make up our atmosphere, I don't know how many of you knew that 78% of what you inhale is nitrogen. 21% is oxygen. That's, folks, do the math. That's 99% is just nitrogen and oxygen. The last 1% includes every gas you can think of. Helium. Well, you guys probably don't know a lot of other gases. But again, there's very little of anything besides oxygen and nitrogen. So each of these gases contributes to the total pressure of 760, and it's based on the percentage. So if the percentage of the atmosphere is nitrogen, so 78% of 760 is approximately 593. 21% of the atmosphere is oxygen. 21% of 760 is 160. And then CO2, because that's the only gas we're really concerned about, all the other gases have no effect on us, all right, is about 0.04%, maybe going up a little bit, okay, with the climate stuff. And so that makes up less than 0.3 millimeters. And again, we have other gases in the atmosphere, but they're so minuscule. Helium, hydrogen, you name it. All right. So far, does this make sense to everybody? All right. Remember, this 760 cannot change. This is our atmospheric pressure. So if these gases change in terms of the percent that they make up in the atmosphere, then their partial pressures, what we call P, changes. So the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere is 21%. That's what the little P means, partial pressure. And so this is the number that we don't care about nitrogen. Nitrogen is biologically inactive. We have absolutely no use for nitrogen. It's just there. For 3 gold stars, that's a lot of gold stars because it's a hard question. You have to know the partial pressure of oxygen for the exam and CO2. Like I just said, nitrogen plays no role in biology for humans. The only things that use nitrogen is bacteria, and you'll learn that when you get microbiology class. So for the stars, and this is just gee whiz biology, where did we get all this oxygen from in our atmosphere? It didn't always used to be that way.
Plants.
No, okay. All right. So if I put both Suresh's, her answer and Deani's answer together, I'm kind of sort of close. Anybody?
Photosynthesis.
Joshua's getting closer. Joshua's getting closer. Ashley is right there too. Oh, you guys are so close. You're so close. How many? You may not. You're probably not all science geeks like me. Algae is even closer. Bacteria. Okay, you guys, if you put algae and bacteria together, you get, I'm going to type it out so you can see it. You get cyanobacteria. Those little organisms learned all about photosynthesis, and they produce the oxygen in our planet. You've never heard of cyanobacteria? Well, Google it just to enhance your knowledge of things. All right. But we owe cyanobacteria our existence because they produce all the oxygen in the atmosphere. Because they figured out photosynthesis. All right. So I'm way off topic here, but I just thought you guys would enjoy that. All right. So this is Dalton's law. And the only thing that's really super important is the CO. I just don't know what I just did. Is the CO2 and the O2. Like I said, nitrogen we have no business with. The next one is Henry's law. Henry says when you have a mixture of gases in contact with a liquid, each gas will dissolve in proportion to its partial pressure. Meaning the more partial pressure of a gas, the more it will dissolve into solution. Now, I'm going to give you a very simple analogy. All right. And if we were actually in class, I would actually bring a bottle of soda. Usually I use Mountain Dew because that's my favorite drink. It's probably the perfect drink ever created. Diet Mountain Dew. Oh my God. You got carbonation. All right, Jessica. Jessica gets extra credit. All right. You got no calories, you got caffeine, and it tastes good. Anyway, so use your imagination. Well, not imagine, just think this through. We like soda, or most of us like carbonated beverages. How did we get it carbonated? Well, CO2 dissolves pretty easy in solution. So what Pepsi or Coke or whoever your favorite thing is, what they did is they took CO2, put it under tremendous pressure, and forced it into the solution of water and whatever flavors they had. They forced it in there. So now the CO2 is dissolved. It's literally dissolved in the Coke or Pepsi or whatever solution. When you look at your Coke bottle before you open it up, you don't see any bubbles or anything. It's dissolved in there because of the high pressure that forced the CO2 into solution. You only see the bubbles of carbon dioxide when you do what? When you open it and shake it. Yeah, because you've released the pressure and now the CO2 wants to leave. It wants to escape. All right. And of course, if you leave your whatever carbonate out overnight, the next morning we say it's what? Yeah, it's flat. All right. All the carbon dioxide dissolved out. All right. Dissolved out. So that's what Henry is saying is depending on the pressure of that gas will depend on how much actually dissolves in solution. And again, for carbonation, for bubbles, we use carbon dioxide because it's easily soluble. It easily dissolves. Oxygen doesn't like to do that. We don't have oxygenated drinks really, except for some weird stuff that you might find on the internet or whatever. Okay, because it's really hard to get it to dissolve in solution. Carbon dioxide is easy. Nitrogen, almost impossible to get that to dissolve. You need super high pressure. And if we had more time, I'd explain how that relates to scuba diving. Do I have any scuba divers out there? No scuba divers? Oh, okay. You should try that sometime. I'm a certified scuba diver. And like I said, there's a lot of physiology involved in there. Oh, Christina, it's not scary. Okay, if you don't like swimming, I get it, but don't be afraid. If you learn the physiology. I've been scuba diving for years and years and years, and guess what? I've never seen a shark. I think it would be cool, but I've seen some barracudas and stuff like that. Christina said, you don't want to see what you're swimming with? Oh, that's crazy. I love it. The scariest thing I ever saw was a grouper that was ginormous. It was like 5 feet long and a giant mouth. And I know that they're not going to hurt me, but it was scary as hell. Anyway, again, diverting. But like I said, nitrogen only comes into play when you go, 90 feet below the sea level, because now you have 3 times the pressure of the atmosphere, and now nitrogen will dissolve, and that can cause you all kinds of problems. You probably have heard of the bends and things like that. But again, that's beyond this course. So what you have to get out of that is, and again, we are focused on oxygen and CO2. All right? We're focused on oxygen, the partial pressure of oxygen. So if you look down here on these little things, it's saying, yes, Samantha, a giant grouper is scary. I mean, I was like, oh my God. But yeah. And the next thought is that would make a great barbecue. But anyway. So this is just kind of showing you that, here's my 100 millimeters of mercury pressure of oxygen. Here's my solution. And because of the pressure, the partial pressure, some of it will dissolve. Not all of it by any stretch until I reach equilibrium. All right. That'll make way more sense in a little bit. All right. The last law is fixed. And you do not, I know you're already freaking out. You do not need to know this equation. All right. What you need to know are the variables involved. So V gas means how fast is this gas diffusing through a membrane? And that is going to depend. We've already talked about surface area. The more surface area you have, the more diffusion you can have. The diffusion coefficient, you don't have to know anything more. That is referring to what we said over here, that some gases diffuse faster than other gases. All right. That's what the diffusion coefficient means. Some dissolve faster than others for physical reasons that's way beyond this course. All right. And then, of course, delta P. You've seen that before when we talked. Oh, no, we have. So this goes the same thing with blood flow. All right. From high pressure to low. The more pressure differential you have, the more diffusion you have. And then we have to factor in the thickness. And this all applies to what we have dealt with for 2 years, as I'll explain shortly. All right. So again, this is just a gee whiz thing here that, of course, our alveoli are made up of simple squamous, very thin cells, 0.5 millionth of a meter thick. And as we already said last class, that your lungs surface area is about a tennis court. Pretty amazing. So that takes care of 2 of Fick's things, surface area and tissue thickness. All right. So the other, and we've already talked about this one. So the only big thing here is this right here, the partial pressure differential. All right. Here's where it gets a little tricky. All right. So we've already said that the O2 is 21% in the atmosphere. That gives me a partial pressure of 160. This is an older slide. I put 0.04 because I'm accounting for the fact that CO2 levels are indeed rising. I'm not too concerned that that's going to give us the climate change, but it's definitely rising a little bit by 0.04%. So we have this 0.25 millimeters. So hardly nothing in the atmosphere. However, boom, oops. When we look at the air that's in your lungs, we have drastic changes. Drastic changes. When you inhale, and now that air is in your lungs, your partial pressure of oxygen went from 160 to 100. And your partial pressure of CO2 went from 0.25 to 40. This has everything to do with Dalton. All right. So let me real quick. Don't freak out yet. Don't freak out yet. All right. Let me go to my camera here real quick. All right. And again, I'm trying to save paper here. Save a tree. So in the atmosphere, it's 160 for O2. PO2 is 160. PCO2 is almost nothing. But now I'll draw some lungs here. All right, now my PO2 of oxygen is 100 and my PCO2 is 40. Why? Where'd that 40 come from? Anybody? Where'd all that CO2 come from? I just covered it before we started this lecture. Where did all that CO2 come from? Come on, somebody. Gas exchange. Where did it CO2 originate, folks? It's this in the atmosphere. It's this in your lungs. Where did that CO2 originate? I don't even know what residual means, Suresh. I'm not sure what that means. Come on, somebody. No, it didn't come from the atmosphere. The atmosphere is 0.25. Okay, Daniel, you're almost there. Bucola, the tissues. Daniel, thank you, Andy. Okay, I'll give you another gold star. Cellular respiration. We just talked about that. You are producing CO2 when you make ATP from glucose and oxygen. So you made all that CO2 through cellular respiration. And again, what you're going to do is exhale that CO2 and get rid of it so I don't have this problem up here. All right? But where this comes into play when we talk about Dalton's law is that 760 cannot change. All right, that's a constant. That's what atmospheric pressure is. So when I'm in the lungs, I have a lot more CO2. I also have H2O that makes up a good percentage. Let's say 20 millimeters. So the PO2 of oxygen drops from 160 to 100 to make up for the CO2 in the water vapor. I believe this is a bonus question, so I'm just giving you that. This is a bonus question on your test. All right, and of course we are talking about Dalton. So make a note of that. All right, so I have to stay at 760. That can't change, but the percentages are different in my lungs. There's way more CO2 in my lungs that is in the atmosphere. There's way more water in my lungs that's in the atmosphere. And again, we're talking about water vapor. And again, think about that. What simple test can you do to prove there's water vapor in your lungs? You're a guest speaker in a first grade class. How do you show them that you have water vapor in your lungs? Okay, very good, Joshua. Yeah. You just breathe on a mirror or a piece of glass and you can see the water vapor. Okay. I would have thought everybody would have jumped in on that one. Okay. And of course, me being old, and we didn't have video games or anything, you had to keep yourself entertained. So that first crisp autumn morning, when it's nice and cold and you went outside and you exhaled, you could what? Very good. You could see your breath. So you know what we did as little kids? This is where I'm dating myself. You would go to the candy store and get the candy cigarettes. Exactly, Christina. You would go to the candy store, get the candy cigarettes, and you could pretend you were smoking just like pretty much every adult did back in the 60s. Christina did that. Really? I said, I don't know how old you are, Christina, but I'd be surprised because I don't even think you can buy candy cigarettes anymore. But anyway. Okay. All right. So you're right there. All right. Okay. Getting back to reality. So again, that's why these are numbers that you absolutely have to know, folks. Absolutely have to know. Hold on. Let me go back to our thing here. So yeah, you have to know these two values, the PO2 100, PCO2 40. With those, we have 100 millimeters of mercury pressure of O2 in the alveoli. The O2 level, this is coming from the venous side. So I've already unloaded a bunch of oxygen. So now my O2 level is at 40. And so now that goes from high to low. That's my delta P, 100 to 40. So what's my delta P? What's the difference in pressure? Okay, good. And that is sufficient to get my blood fully saturated with oxygen. And now this oxygen is on the arterial side, and this is going to go to your tissues, and it's going to unload a bunch of that oxygen. Not all of it. 60 millimeters. It's going to come back at 40. Beautiful. Okay. Yes, that's it. That's all I did. It was just subtract 100 from 40, and you get a delta P of 60. That's the difference. All right. And this happens very quickly. So now your blood is saturated with oxygen. It's going to make its way to the tissue, and it's going to unload about 60 of that pressure and come back to the 40. That's why when we talk about holding your breath, you still have a lot of oxygen left. Even when your blood has made a full circulation through your body, you still have plenty of oxygen. So if it wasn't for the CO2 problem, you could hold your breath for probably 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, now CO2 different in the alveoli. The CO2 level is 40 millimeters. We already covered that. In your bloodstream, on the venous side, it's 46. So it's still higher than the alveoli, so it's going to diffuse. What's my delta P? Yeah, very good, folks. But again, remember what we said, CO2 is 20 times more soluble. So I don't need a high delta P to get a lot of CO2 diffused to the lungs. And again, you produced this CO2 from cellular respiration. And now you want to get rid of it. You want to exhale, get rid of that stuff so we don't have a pH problem. All right. Internal respiration is almost the exact same, except for now we're at the capillary level. We're looking at the bottom thing here. And again, my PO2 is around 95. I lost a little bit. It was 100. I lost a little bit because the cells that make up your linings of your blood vessels kind of like, skim off the top because they are living. They need oxygen. So the endothelium that make up the lining of your blood vessels just skim a little bit off the top. Not a big deal. All right. Your tissue PO2 is 40 because they used a bunch of the oxygen to make ATP. So once again, I'm high in the capillary, low in my tissue, and once again, I just have diffusion. The PCO2 is higher in the cells because I made it when I went through cellular respiration. So this says 45. There's different textbooks, 1 or 2 millimeters of mercury isn't going to make a difference. So you can use 45 or 46. It doesn't really matter. But it's still higher than it is in the bloodstream, which is 40. So I go from high to low. That's it, folks. That's it. Any questions? So I'm going to go to the camera again. Normally you would have to draw this, but what you're going to have to do is describe it. But I want to have you record this excuse me, and practice it so that you will do fine on the test. And of course, this is going to be a big, big, big essay question. All right. So I'm going to draw an alveoli. Here's my little alveoli. This is my capillary. Because I'm going to give you some important things here. That's capillary. My PO2 is what? Here? Somebody, quick. Let's see how fast we're picking this up. Come on. Why is that? No. My PO2 is not 100 in the capillary. I mean, in the alveoli. What's it in the alveoli here? No. Come on, guys. We just covered that. No, it's 100. Why are you guys? This is a capillary and an alveoli. All right, so it's 100 here. You guys are at the tissue. I guess I should have put external respiration. Okay. And the PCO2 is what? Good. All right. And here comes my blood flow. And again, my PO2 here is 40, and my PCO2 is 46. So my oxygen is going to go this way, and my CO2 is going to go that way. So when I pass through the lungs, my PO2 is now 100, and my PCO2 is now 40. And now I'm going to the tissues. All right. Any questions? All right. Now, let's do something. What I'm going to say now is not on your test. It's just so you know. All right. Does anybody know what causes death in COVID patients? Okay, very good. Very good. For who said that? Danielle and Joshua. And Christine as well, but the inflammation results in fluid. So I have a bunch of fluid in my capillaries, actually in my alveoli. So it's harder to get the gases diffused because I have all this junk, there's all this extra fluid in there, and I can't get the oxygen to the capillaries. So what do I do? What can I possibly do to help? It didn't work all the time by any stretch, but how can I get this oxygen to the capillaries? What could I change? What was the big screaming thing? What did we need a lot of in the early onset of COVID? What were they screaming that they needed more of? Very good, Natalia. Ventilators. And now I hope that this enlightens you. So what does a ventilator do? It gives me extra oxygen. Very good, Joshua. It gives me extra oxygen. So instead of a PO2, I'm going to draw a second capillary so it's not so messy. All right, excuse me, alveoli. So here's my alveoli. And now I'm going to introduce extra O2. That's what a ventilator does. It just gives you more O2. All right. So remember, 760 can't change, but I can change the percent. So if I add oxygen, instead of it being 21% like it is in the atmosphere, with a ventilator, I can increase it to like twice that, to 42%. That would mean my PO2 is not 100, but 200. And now what have I done? I've increased my delta P from 60 to 160. And that's what Fick says, is if you have a bigger delta P, you increase the diffusion rate. And so that was the whole point of a ventilator, adding more oxygen, increasing the partial pressure of O2, increasing the delta P, and forcing more CO2, or excuse me, more O2 into the capillaries. Did that make sense to everybody? Just 2 people? Did I lose a lot of people? Okay. And if that doesn't work, not only can I use a ventilator, which will increase the percent of oxygen I can use, I can do one more drastic step. I can increase the partial pressure by how? This I said is constant, but is it really, really constant? What could I do? You can't change the atmosphere, but we can put a mask on somebody. No, the CO2 has nothing to do with this. The pressure tank, I think I know what you're talking about there, but we can put a mask on them and increase the actual pressure. So this is normal atmospheric pressure, but if I put a mask on somebody and I increase it, I jack this up from 760 to say 770, all right, that increases my partial pressure. So yeah, so if you have somebody in really bad shape, not only are they on a ventilator with increased O2, they have a pressure mask on that increases the pressure that, again, helps force the oxygen into the lungs. So now you know why we needed ventilators and partial pressure breathing and whatnot. But again, it didn't work for a lot of people, especially if you're older, because eventually, I'm just going to be kind of morbid, we just fill it all in, and it's too late. Boom, 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 boom. It's too much fluid, too much inflammation. Okay, everybody got it. All right, beautiful. Okay, we're going to move on. And of course, this is what we do for, see, this is where I get excited about this. This is what we do for, test pilots, fighter pilots, and astronauts. You saw the centrifuge tapes, right? I showed you my centrifuge tapes. Yeah, and so that mask I was wearing was literally forcing air into my lungs. Positive pressure breathing, increased O2 levels. So when you're pulling the 9Gs, my regulator was increasing the O2 levels above 21% and increasing the pressure that was basically inflating my lungs like a balloon. All right. Let's move on. Actually, let's take a small break. We're almost done. But let's take a small break, so I'm sure your brains are pretty full. So it's 6:35, so we'll be back at 6:50. Everybody got it? 6:50. All right, same room. Actually, no, because I'm taping this. So once I shut the tape off, I have to create a new room. It'll just say, respiratory 3, okay? Respiratory 3. Because once I end the recording, I can't just pick up where I left off. All right, I'll see you in a little bit. 6:50, 650.